talked about the fact that Velus Jones Jr. and Tyler Scott have basically been put on competitive notice with the wide receiver room. And Matt Eberflus did also point out that the wide receivers and running backs, there is a lot of competition in those rooms. They tried to raise the level of competition. Ryan Poles yesterday talked about in the offseason what they did. How did they evaluate the roster? Well, they looked at the different position groups and decided where it was competitive and where it seemed to be like, not so competitive. And that's why they brought guys in and tried to amp it up at those position levels, with the exception of defensive end.
Right.
I found that really interesting. And this is what Ryan Poles had to say yesterday about the defensive line.
One topic, the defensive end position has popped up multiple times. Listen, it's in the front office, our job to look at every option that's out there to improve our football team. We feel really comfortable with the guys that we have on our roster now, and I'm excited. We're both excited to see Travis and Eric really put their hands on those guys and develop them as we go through the beginning of training camp. But we will always have our eyes, on the list of players that we could potentially bring in.
So, Dionne, they are really, we've said this so many times before on this show, they are really relying on the coaching to coach up a DeMarcus Walker, who was third on the team last year with 3.5 sacks, and to coach up a Jervon Dexter, who got 2.5 sacks last year, and a Dominique Robinson, who I believe Domrob was credited with half a sack last year.
Right. I mean, they were the worst in the league. They have to pressure the quarterback. That's where it starts. And I have wondered how, if DeMarcus Walker is left in that position and he is pushed with the right coaching, I believe him to be very motivated. I remember when Montez was brought in last year, and you could tell that he was like, wait a minute, what is going on with this defensive line and my position here? I just feel like he's going to be super motivated this year to be a part of that defensive front and to get in on some of that, what Montez was doing with sacking the quarterback and leading the team in that way defensively. I just think that can only be a good, that competition for him can only be a good thing. And you heard them say that Jervon has worked hard on his physique, like physically. He's already a monster.
What did Montez Sweat say?
Did he say that he had a picture of him with his shirt off, like on the beach or something?
That he was actually doing the conditioning drills with like the wide receivers or something like that?
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
I love it. But Jervon is a presence. And if he is able to figure it out from that position, he can be very, very disruptive.
The Bears last year were number 1 in rushing defense, number 2 in rushing touchdowns allowed. They had 22 interceptions that tied with San Francisco, and they were tied for 5th in total takeaways. It's just more of that up front, more of the pressure up front. If they could get that push, those numbers will even get better for the secondary. It's a matter of who is it going to be. Yannick Ngakoue, if you remember, finished last year injured. So he is rehabbing. He was rehabbing with the Bears up until a certain point, and then he had to leave the Bears facility because he's no longer under contract with the Bears. But we've seen some of his home videos on social media.
He looks healthy and strong, and like he's running around quick. And I did find it interesting. Montez was like, we wish him the best.
Yeah.
So
we're like, he could be back.
I know he could be back.
He could actually return. There is talk that, listen, Ryan Poles is going to be keeping an eye on what is going on in other camps. One of those camps is also New York Jets camp. So Haason Reddick, the Eagles traded Reddick to the Jets this offseason, but Reddick actually skipped spring workouts because he didn't get a contract extension from the Jets. So there's a pass rusher that could become available in a trade. Ngakoue could become available. And Montez Sweat said that he was a fan of Ngakoue's before he even became a teammate with him. So it's always you got to keep an eye on some of the other camps and see, who might become available as well.
And we have to wait. So they'll put the pads on next weekend. Next Saturday, I believe they'll put the pads on for that first practice, and then they play in the Hall of Fame game 5-6 days later. I think that will be very telling to see what they truly believe about their defensive front and if they're ready to bring somebody else in.
Well, and the defense is who they want Caleb to actually learn from as well. And so they
Yes,
need
yes.
that defense to be really
course.
tough.